The transport shuttle's engines hummed as it approached the massive space station that housed the Galactic Defense Academy. Through the viewport, Zara Chen pressed her small face against the reinforced glass, watching as the structure grew larger. At 14 years old and barely 5 feet tall, she was the youngest cadet ever accepted into the elite program that trained the galaxy's most feared warriors. The other passengers on the shuttle were typical recruits. Massive thoraxians with their chitinous armor plating, towering vegan warriors whose blue skin rippled with natural muscle enhancement, and sleek Andromedans whose silver eyes could see across multiple spectrums. Zara looked like a child among giants, her standard-issue uniform hanging loose on her tiny frame. "Human," one of the thoraxians clicked in broken galactic standard. "You lost? Civilian transport is different level." Zara turned from the viewport, her dark eyes steady despite her nervousness. "I'm Cadet Chen, reporting for training." The creature's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Training? You barely reach my knee joint. Perhaps clerical work more suitable." Before Zara could respond, the shuttle's atmosphere shifted. A presence filled the space like gravity suddenly doubling. Every alien on the transport fell silent, their various forms of breathing becoming shallow and careful. Through the passenger compartment walked a figure that made even the largest warriors shrink back. Kael'thane was a legend across 17 star systems. The prime galactic hunter stood nearly 8 feet tall, his obsidian black armor seeming to absorb light itself. Scars crisscrossed his exposed arms, each one representing a different species he'd faced in single combat. His face was angular and sharp, with eyes like molten silver that missed nothing. The weapon at his side hummed with barely contained energy, and his reputation preceded him like a shadow. He moved through the shuttle with fluid grace, his gaze sweeping over each recruit with professional assessment. When his eyes found Zara, something shifted in his expression. Not pity, not amusement, but something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. "Cadet Chen." His voice was like distant thunder, carrying authority that made star systems bend to his will. "You're smaller than your file indicated." "Sir." Zara straightened to her full height, which still left her looking up at his chest plate. "I meet all physical requirements for admission." "Do you?" His head tilted slightly. "The Academy requires cadets to survive a full rotation. That means combat training with species that could accidentally crush you. It means tactical exercises where your squad's life depends on your performance. It means facing creatures from the void reaches that have devoured entire colonies." The other recruits listened with growing amusement. This tiny human was about to be dismissed before even reaching the station. "Yes, sir." Zara's voice remained steady. "I understand the risks." Kael'thane studied her for a long moment. In his silver eyes, she saw something that surprised her. Not doubt, but calculation. He was measuring something about her that the others couldn't see. "Very well," he said finally. "We'll see if you survive orientation." The shuttle docked with a mechanical clang that reverberated through the hull. As they disembarked, Zara found herself surrounded by beings that towered over her. The Galactic Defense Academy was enormous, its corridors stretching beyond sight. Holographic displays showed training scenarios, star maps, and footage of past conflicts. The air hummed with energy shields and weapon systems. "New recruits, formation line!" A Centaurian drill instructor's 4 arms gestured sharply. The recruits arranged themselves by height, leaving Zara at the far end looking like an afterthought. "You are here because your species believes you have potential. Most of you will be proven wrong within the first cycle." The instructor's eyes found Zara and lingered. "Some of you clearly more wrong than others." "Instructor Vexhai." Kael'thane's voice cut through the air like a blade. The Centaurian immediately straightened. "Is there a problem with the recruitment standards?" "No, sir, Prime Hunter. just making observations about physical readiness. Your observations are noted. Kael'thane moved to stand beside Zara, his massive form casting her in shadow. Cadet Chen will receive standard training. Any instructor who feels she requires special consideration may discuss it with me personally. The message was clear. Every being in that corridor understood that challenging the tiny human meant challenging the prime galactic hunter himself. Instructor Vex High's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he processed this unexpected development. The first day of training began immediately. Combat assessment in the gravity chambers, where artificial fields could simulate the conditions of hundreds of different worlds. Zara found herself paired against a Rigelian whose natural strength could bend steel bars. The creature outweighed her by at least 300 pounds and had natural weapons that could slice through armor. "This not fair," the Rigelian rumbled, its translator struggling with emotional context. "I might accidentally destroy small human." From the observation deck, Kael'thane watched without expression. Other instructors muttered among themselves about the obvious mismatch, but none dared countermand his protection of the human recruit. The match began. The Rigelian moved forward carefully, trying to end the fight quickly without seriously injuring Zara. Its massive claws swept toward her in what it thought was a gentle arc. Zara wasn't there. She moved like water, flowing around the attack with impossible speed. Her small fist struck a pressure point behind the creature's knee, and the giant stumbled. Before it could recover, she was behind it, using its own momentum to send it crashing to the mat. The training hall fell silent. The Rigelian struggled to its feet, confusion clear in its multifaceted eyes. How had something so small moved so fast? "Again," Kael'thane's voice carried from the observation deck. For the next hour, Zara faced opponent after opponent, each one larger, stronger, better armed than her. Each one ended up on the mat, defeated by techniques that seemed to defy physics. She moved like she was dancing with gravity itself, turning her opponent's strength against them. By the end of the session, word had spread throughout the academy. The tiny human wasn't just surviving, she was dominating. That evening in the common area, Zara sat alone at a table designed for beings much larger than herself. Her feet didn't touch the floor, and her food portion looked enormous compared to her size. The other recruits gave her a wide berth, uncertain how to process what they'd witnessed. "Human," the Thoraxian from the shuttle approached carefully. "I owe apology. Was wrong about your capabilities." "Thank you," Zara replied simply. "What's your name?" "Thexkar, of the Warrior Clutch of Proxima 7th. May ask question?" She nodded. "How do you move like that? Your species files indicate normal physical parameters. What you did was not normal." Before she could answer, the air in the common area shifted again. Kael'thane entered, and conversations died. He moved directly to Zara's table, his presence causing nearby recruits to find urgent business elsewhere. "Cadet Chen?" He sat across from her, his armor adjusting to accommodate the furniture designed for multiple species. "Impressive performance today." "Thank you, sir. Your file lists your homeworld as Earth, Sector 7. Agricultural classification. No mention of advanced combat training or genetic enhancement." Zara met his silver gaze steadily. "That's correct, sir." "Then explain how a 14-year-old from a farming world can defeat trained warriors from species bred for combat." She was quiet for a moment, considering her words. Around them, the common area had gone completely silent, as every recruit strained to hear the conversation. "My grandfather taught me," she said finally. "He said that being small wasn't a weakness if you learned to use it properly. He showed me how to move, how to see the spaces between things that bigger beings missed." "Your grandfather was military?" "He never said, but sometimes when he thought I wasn't listening, he would talk in his sleep. About battles in the void reaches, about things that hunted in the dark between stars." Kelthane leaned forward slightly. What was his name? Chen Wei-Ming. He died 2 years ago. The prime galactic hunter was very still for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a different quality, something almost like respect. I knew Chen Wei-Ming, he said quietly. He was the finest warrior I ever fought beside. He saved my life during the Andromeda incursion and the lives of 300 other soldiers. When he disappeared after the war, many assumed he was dead. Zara's eyes widened. He never told me. Men like your grandfather rarely speak of such things. They carry their battles inside them. Kelthane studied her with new understanding. Now I begin to see why you move the way you do. Chen Wei-Ming developed techniques that are still classified at the highest levels, combat forms that turned human limitations into advantages. He called it dancing with giants, Zara whispered. Yes. The prime hunter's expression softened almost imperceptibly. That's what we called it. The art of fighting beings larger and stronger than yourself by becoming something they couldn't catch or predict. He stood, his armor plates shifting with the movement. Your grandfather made me promise something before he left service. He said if I ever encountered his family, I was to ensure their protection. I intend to honor that promise. As he moved to leave, Zara called after him. Sir, is that why you're protecting me? Because of a promise? Kelthane turned back, and for just a moment, the legendary warrior's mask slipped. She saw something almost paternal in his expression. Initially, yes, he admitted. But after watching you fight today, I protect you for the same reason I protected your grandfather. Because warriors like you are precious beyond measure, and the galaxy needs what you can become. That night, as Zara lay in her assigned quarters, she touched the small pendant her grandfather had given her before he died. It was a simple thing, carved from earth wood, but it had belonged to his grandfather, and his before that. A reminder that strength came in many forms. Outside her window, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Somewhere among them were worlds that needed defending, creatures that threatened the peace her grandfather had helped establish. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opponents who would underestimate the small human girl. But tonight, for the first time since arriving at the academy, Zara Chen felt like she belonged among the giants. Her grandfather's teachings lived on in her movements. His legacy carried forward in her determination to prove that sometimes the smallest warrior casts the largest shadow. In his own quarters, Kelthane reviewed footage from the day's training. Over and over, he watched Zara move through combat scenarios with fluid grace that reminded him painfully of her grandfather. Chen Wei-Ming had been more than a comrade. He had been the closest thing to a friend that the prime hunter had ever known. Protecting his granddaughter was more than duty. It was a chance to honor the memory of the greatest warrior Kelthane had ever known, and perhaps to help forge a new legend in the process. The academy slept around them, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy resting before another day of training. But change was already in motion. Word of the tiny human's abilities was spreading, and with it, questions about what Earth had produced in this small package. By morning, everything would be different. The Academy's morning alarm resonated through crystalline walls at frequencies designed to wake every known species. Zara was already awake, having spent the pre-dawn hours practicing the movement forms her grandfather had taught her. In the dim light of her quarters, she flowed through sequences that would have looked like dancing to an untrained observer. The common mess hall buzzed with nervous energy. Today marked the first major evaluation exercise, where recruits would face live combat scenarios against Academy training constructs. These weren't simple holograms, but actual mechanical opponents designed to test every aspect of a warrior's capabilities. Human, Thexkar approached her table with what passed for nervous body language among his species. May sit with you? Zara gestured to the empty space beside her, which was massive enough that the thoraxian's bulk barely fit. Several other recruits had begun gathering around her over the past few days. Not out of friendship exactly, but from a growing recognition that the small human represented something unprecedented. Heard about today's trials, a vegan warrior named Silthara settled across from them, her blue skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns that indicated anxiety. Combat constructs based on real threats, some modeled after creatures from the Void Reaches. Void Reaches? Zara asked. Dark space between star systems, Thexakar explained. Home to things that feed on starlight and hunt in the emptiness. During the Andromeda incursion, entire fleets disappeared there. Silthara's patterns shifted to deeper blues. My clutch sister served on the frontier stations. She said the constructs here are built from actual specimens that were captured. They fight exactly like the real thing. Before anyone could respond, the mess hall's atmosphere changed. Kael'thane entered, his presence causing conversations to fade into whispers. But this time, he wasn't alone. With him walked three other figures that made even veteran instructors step aside. Commander Velta of the Rigelian Battle Corps, whose exoskeleton bore scars from 100 conflicts. Admiral Quexna, whose cybernetic enhancements gleamed silver against her Centaurian features. And most intimidating of all, General Mordak, a draconian whose species hadn't produced a warrior of his caliber in 3 centuries. Senior staff, Silthara whispered. They only gather for major evaluations, or when something unprecedented happens. The group moved through the mess hall with purpose, their eyes scanning the recruits. When their gaze found Zara, the intensity of their attention made her feel like a specimen under analysis. Cadet Chen, Kael'thane's voice carried across the sudden silence. Report to Training Bay 7 in 30 minutes. Full combat gear. As the senior staff departed, excited murmurs filled the hall. Training Bay 7 was reserved for advanced scenarios, challenges typically given to third-year students. No first-week recruit had ever been assigned there. This is honor, Thexakar's mandibles clicked nervously. Or death sentence, sometimes same thing. Zara finished her meal in thoughtful silence. Around her, the other recruits speculated about what awaited her, but she found herself thinking about her grandfather's words. The bigger they are, little star, the more space they take up. But there's always space between things. Always room for something small and quick to slip through. Training Bay 7 was enormous. Its walls lined with energy shields designed to contain weapons that could level city blocks. As Zara entered wearing her standard cadet armor, she felt dwarfed by the scale of everything around her. The observation deck held not just the senior staff, but other instructors and advanced students who had come to witness whatever was about to unfold. In the center of the bay waited her opponent. The Void Hunter stood 12 feet tall, its form a nightmare fusion of organic and mechanical components. Black metal flowed like liquid skin over a frame that suggested something evolved in the deepest darkness between stars. 6 arms ended in claws designed to rend both flesh and starship hulls. Its head was a sensor cluster that could track movement across multiple dimensions, and its movement suggested intelligence that was both alien and malevolent. Combat Construct Designation VH-7, an automated voice announced. Modeled after specimens encountered during Void Reach incursions. Threat level, extreme. Cadet Chen, you may begin when ready. From the observation deck, Kael'thane watched with silver eyes that revealed nothing of his thoughts. Beside him, Commander Velta leaned forward. This seems excessive for a first-year cadet, Prime Hunter. The VH-7 has injured experienced warriors. Chen Wei-Ming faced 3 of these during the Andromeda incursion, Kael'thane replied quietly. He survived by teaching himself to become something they couldn't predict. His granddaughter carries that knowledge. You're gambling with a child's life based on genetics and speculation. I'm testing a theory. that could change how we understand human potential. In the arena below, Zara studied her opponent as it began its approach. The Void Hunter moved with predatory grace, its multiple arms weaving hypnotic patterns designed to confuse prey. Its sensor cluster tracked her position with mechanical precision, calculating attack vectors faster than most organic minds could process. She closed her eyes for a moment, hearing her grandfather's voice across the years. "Don't fight the mountain, little star. Dance around it. Don't meet force with force. Meet it with emptiness." The Void Hunter struck. Its attack was a blur of metal claws that should have reduced Zara to component atoms. Instead, she was elsewhere, moving in ways that seemed to violate basic physics. Where the creature expected resistance, it found nothing. Where it predicted she would dodge, she flowed like water into spaces that shouldn't have existed. Her first counterattack was almost gentle, a precise strike against a joint that caused the construct's left arm to spasm. The hunter adapted instantly, shifting its attack pattern to compensate. But Zara was already moving, her small form finding gaps in its defenses that its programming hadn't accounted for. "Impossible!" Admiral Quexna's cybernetic implants whirred as they processed the scene. "She's moving faster than the construct's tracking systems can follow." "Not faster," General Mordak corrected, his draconian eyes analyzing every movement. "Smarter. She's predicting where its sensors will look and simply not being there." The battle continued for 20 minutes, a deadly dance between predator and prey where the roles kept shifting. The Void Hunter's attacks became increasingly frantic as its target refused to behave according to any known pattern. Zara moved like she was in conversation with gravity itself, her small fists finding weak points in construction that the creature's designers had thought were protected. Finally, she struck the decisive blow. A leap that carried her onto the construct's back, a precise impact against its central processor housing. The Void Hunter collapsed, its systems shutting down in cascading failure. Silence filled Training Bay 7. In the observation deck, beings who had faced down star destroyers and conquered systems watched a 14-year-old human girl with something approaching awe. "Time to completion, 23 minutes, 14 seconds, the automated system announced. "Previous Academy record, 41 minutes, 7 seconds. New record established." As Zara walked toward the exit, her legs shaking with exhaustion, she tried to hide. Kael'thane met her at the arena floor. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like my grandfather is proud," she replied quietly. That evening, the Academy was buzzing with news of the record-breaking performance. Instructors who had initially dismissed the tiny human were now analyzing footage frame by frame, trying to understand techniques that seemed to defy established combat doctrine. But in the senior staff quarters, a different conversation was taking place. "The implications are staggering," Commander Velta paced as much as his exoskeleton allowed. "If one human can display these capabilities, what does that suggest about their species' potential?" Earth was classified as a minor agricultural world. Admiral Quexna consulted her data streams. Population of 8 billion, pre-spaceflight development. Their combat assessments rated them as moderate threat at best. General Mordak's scaled features showed contemplation. "Perhaps our assessment methods are flawed. My ancestors valued individual prowess over technological advancement. This human child fights like she was born understanding principles we struggle to teach our best warriors." Kael'thane stood at the observation window, watching stars wheel in their ancient patterns. "Chen Wei-Ming told me something once, during the worst fighting in the void reaches. He said humans didn't evolve to be the strongest or fastest. They evolved to be the most adaptable, to survive when everything else failed. You think there are others like her? I think we've barely glimpsed what Earth produces when it's pushed to its limits." The Prime Hunter turned to face his colleagues. "And I think the galaxy needs to understand that before we face our next real crisis." In her quarters, Zara practiced her forms in the darkness, her movements flowing like water even in the confined space. Through her small window, she could see the Academy's training bays, where tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opponents who expected her to fail. But tonight, she felt her grandfather's presence in every movement. His legacy living on through techniques that turned weakness into strength. She was no longer just the smallest recruit at the Academy. She was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. On distant Earth, in quiet farming communities and bustling cities, 8 billion humans went about their daily lives unaware that their species had just announced itself to the galaxy in a way that would change everything. One small girl had shattered assumptions that had stood for millennia, proving that sometimes the most dangerous warriors came in the smallest packages. The Academy slept around her, but change was already spreading like ripples in a cosmic pond. By morning, representatives from a dozen star systems would be requesting information about human recruitment protocols. The tiny human had become a catalyst for something much larger than anyone yet understood. And in the depths of space, in the darkness between stars where ancient threats stirred, entities that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant began to take notice. The void reaches whispered with new purpose, as intelligence beyond understanding recognized that the galaxy's balance of power had just shifted in ways that demanded investigation. The smallest recruit had become the center of a storm that would reshape everything. 3 months had passed since Zara's arrival at the Academy, and the ripple effects of her performances had spread throughout the galaxy. Representatives from the Galactic Council had arrived unannounced, their ships forming a small fleet in the Academy's orbital space. Something was happening that went far beyond a single recruit's exceptional abilities. Zara found herself assigned to Alpha Squad, the Academy's most elite training unit. Her squad mates were 3rd and 4th year cadets who had initially resented having a first year added to their ranks. That resentment had evaporated after their first joint exercise, when Zara's unconventional tactics had saved the entire squad from a scenario designed to test their limits. "Movement in the Eastern Quadrant," Velnox, a Andromedran with enhanced sensory capabilities, whispered through their comm system. The squad was deep in the Academy's most challenging training environment, a multi-level maze filled with adaptive threats that learned from each encounter. "Confirmed," Zara's voice was barely audible as she ghosted through shadows that shouldn't have concealed someone her size. 3 hostiles, pattern suggests void reach variants. Squad leader Tormax, a 4th-year Draconian whose scales bore the marks of countless training battles, felt his tactical assessment shift. In 3 months, he had learned to trust the small human's readings above his own enhanced senses. She saw patterns that others missed, predicted movements that seemed random to everyone else. The attack came from an unexpected angle. Training constructs dropped from above, their forms shifting to match the environment. These were newer models designed to counter the techniques that had made Zara famous throughout the Academy. They moved differently, adapted faster, learned from her previous encounters. "They've been programmed to counter your style," Velnox observed as the squad engaged the constructs. "Someone's been studying your techniques." Zara flowed between attacks that would have cornered her 3 months earlier. But these constructs anticipated her movements, blocked escape routes she would normally have used. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, she found herself genuinely challenged. "Squad leader," she called out as a construct nearly tagged her with an energy blast. "Permission to try something new?" "Granted," Tormax replied while grappling with a construct designed to match Draconian strength. "Do what you do." What Zara did next would become legend throughout the Academy. Instead of fighting the construct's adaptations, she embraced them. She began moving in patterns that seemed random even to her squad mates, techniques that had no basis in any known combat doctrine. When the constructs adapted to counter her movements, she changed again, flowing through forms that her grandfather had never taught her. She was evolving in real time, creating new techniques as the battle demanded them. Impossible, Velnox breathed as he watched her literally dance through an attack pattern designed by the Academy's best tactical minds. She's not using any established combat form. She's making it up as she goes. The constructs, for all their adaptive programming, couldn't counter something that didn't follow any predictable pattern. Within minutes, the training exercise was over, Alpha Squad victorious against odds that should have been impossible. In the observation chamber above, a gathering unlike any in Academy history watched the footage replay. Galactic Council members sat alongside Academy leadership, their expressions ranging from amazement to concern. Counselor Thexeron, Kylthane addressed the Thoraxian representative whose chitinous features reflected deep thought. Your assessment? The human displays capabilities that exceed our understanding of biological limitations. The counselor's translator rendered his clicking speech into Galactic standard. Her performance suggests access to combat intuition that we previously thought was purely theoretical. Admiral Quexena leaned forward, her cybernetic implants processing data streams at superhuman speed. Our analysis indicates she's not simply using superior reflexes or speed. She's predicting outcomes several moves ahead, calculating probability matrices that our best computers struggle with. The question, General Mordak interjected, his draconian features showing concern, is whether this represents normal human potential or if Cadet Chen is an exceptional individual. Council member Sil Thek, whose vegan heritage included natural empathic abilities, spoke quietly. I sense something else. The child carries knowledge that she herself doesn't fully understand. Genetic memories, perhaps, or inherited instincts that run deeper than training. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Academy. Not training alerts, but the deep, resonant warning that indicated actual threat detection. All stations, this is not a drill, the Academy's Central Intelligence announced. Unidentified vessels approaching from the void reaches. Configuration suggests hostile intent. The observation chamber's main display shifted to show the Academy's external sensors. 3 ships approached through the darkness between stars, their forms defying conventional design principles. They moved like living things, their hulls shifting and adapting as they traveled. These weren't ships in any traditional sense, but something far more dangerous. Void hunters, Kylthane's voice carried a grim recognition. A scouting force. They haven't been seen this close to inhabited systems in 20 years. Counselor Thexran's mandibles clicked rapidly. Why now? What's drawn them from the deep spaces? The answer came from an unexpected source. In the training complex below, Zara suddenly stopped mid-conversation with her squad mates, her head tilted, as if listening to something only she could hear. When she spoke, her voice carried a certainty that sent chills through everyone who heard it. They're here because of me, she said quietly. They can sense what I am, what I'm becoming. The communication system crackled with her words, carrying them to the observation chamber above. Every eye turned to the displays showing the small human standing among her giant squad mates. Explain, Kylthane's voice carried through the intercom. My grandfather's stories, Zara replied, her young face showing understanding beyond her years. He said the Void Hunters could sense potential. They hunted beings who might become threats to their expansion into our reality. He thought they were just nightmares from the war, but now I understand. Understand what? General Mordak demanded. Humans aren't just adaptable, she said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. We're infectious. Our ability to adapt, to change, to overcome, it spreads to others, makes everyone around us better at surviving impossible odds. In the observation chamber, the implications hit like a physical blow. If Zara was right, her presence at the academy hadn't just improved her own capabilities, it had been enhancing everyone around her, pushing them to exceed their known limitations. The training records, Admiral Quexna's mechanical voice carried new urgency as she processed data. Academy performance metrics have improved across all species since Cadet Chen's arrival. We attributed it to natural competition and improved training protocols. But it's her, Counselor Siltek breathed. She's been making everyone around her better without realizing it. The Void Hunter ships had stopped just outside the Academy's defense perimeter. They hung in space like predators studying prey, their shifting hulls pulsing with energies that made sensor readings fluctuate. "Prime Hunter!" The Academy's defense coordinator's voice crackled through the communication system. "They're scanning us. Deep spectrum analysis. They're looking for something specific." Kael'thane stood, his armor plates shifting as combat protocols engaged automatically. "They're looking for her. The Void Hunters have existed in the spaces between realities for eons. They've learned to recognize threats before they fully manifest. So, what do we do?" Tormax's voice carried from below. The young Draconian squad leader's training, warring with protective instincts toward his smallest squad member. The answer came from Zara herself. She stepped forward, her tiny frame somehow commanding the attention of beings who could have crushed her without effort. "We show them what humans really are," she said. "Not individually, but when we're working together. When we're making everyone around us better than they thought they could be." "Cadet Chen." Kael'thane's voice carried warning. "These aren't training constructs. Void Hunters have destroyed star systems." "I know." Her voice was steady, carrying the echo of her grandfather's courage. "But they've never faced humans who had time to teach others what we know about surviving the impossible. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for generations." Under Zara's guidance, the Academy's entire population began moving with coordinated precision that seemed to violate everything known about interspecies cooperation. Humans, it turned out, didn't just adapt to overcome challenges. They taught adaptation itself, spreading techniques and insights that allowed entirely different species to work together in ways that had never been achieved. The Academy's defenses came online in patterns that confused the Void Hunters' analysis systems. Instead of predictable military responses, they faced something organic and flowing. Defense turrets moved like dancers. Shield generators created overlapping fields that bent space-time itself, and fighter squadrons flew in formations that seemed more like flocking behavior than tactical deployment. "This is impossible," one of the council members whispered as they watched the display. 17 different species working in perfect coordination without central command structure. But Zara was walking among them all, her small presence somehow touching every being in the Academy. Not commanding, but inspiring. Showing them possibilities they hadn't imagined. Teaching them that the space between different capabilities wasn't empty, but full of potential for something greater. The Void Hunters, faced with a response they couldn't categorize or counter, did something unprecedented in their recorded history. They withdrew, melting back into the darkness between stars like nightmares retreating from dawn. In the aftermath, as Academy systems powered down from full alert, the galaxy faced a new reality. Humanity hadn't just proven they could fight. They had demonstrated something far more dangerous to the established order. They could teach, inspire, and elevate every species they encountered. "The implications are staggering," Counselor Thexran spoke into the stunned silence. "If one human child can do this, what happens when humanity fully enters galactic civilization?" Kael'thane looked down at Zara, who stood among her squad mates with quiet dignity. She looked tired, but undefeated, her grandfather's legacy living on in ways that exceeded even his warriors' dreams. "We adapt," he said simply, "because that's what humans teach us to do, and perhaps that's exactly what the galaxy needs." As reports of the Academy incident spread throughout known space, recruitment protocols began shifting. Earth found itself reclassified from a minor agricultural world to a priority contact species. But more importantly, the template of cooperation that Zara had demonstrated began spreading to other installations, other worlds, other challenges. The Littlest recruit had become the catalyst for a new kind of galactic civilization, one where adaptation wasn't just survival, but evolution, where the strength to overcome the impossible could be taught, shared, and multiplied across the stars. And in the darkness between realities, ancient entities that fed on stagnation and despair began to realize that the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, but as teachers of the one thing that could truly threaten the void: hope.